Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Highlight Haven NFL Tailgate Show. I am your host, Matthew Heiserman, and today we are joined by Josh Wolver of Josh's Sports Report to preview the AFC and NFC Championship games. Josh, it's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me on, Matt. Only 2 more weeks of this. We've got 4 teams remaining, the final four, including your Washington Commanders.
Yeah, and speaking of my Washington Commanders, we're going to start with that game. Actually, before we get to that, we're obviously going to be taking callers throughout the stream using the link in the chat. If you have any questions, you can also write them in the chat. We will be looking at them. But let's get right into it. Commanders at Eagles. Eagles 6-point favorites, which I found to be a little bit high. I feel like if you ask the majority of football fans, they actually have the Commanders winning this game, including the analysts at, NFL, ESPN. A lot of them are picking the Commanders. This one is Sunday, 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Sam Cosmi is out with a knee injury. Deron Payne is out with a knee/finger injury. And Philly's hot. They're 14-1 in their last 15 games. Josh, are they going to be 15-1 or is it going to be 14-2?
Well, I don't know, Matt, but we do know who that one loss was to. It
Yeah.
was to the Commanders, and
Yeah.
what was really a wild game, right? You had the
Mhm.
Philadelphia probably winning that game there at the end. Devontae Smith drops a wide open football there, end of the regular season. As for this game, I'd agree with you. I think that 6 point spread is just a little too high
Mhm.
for me. If you're placing a bet on this game, I think Washington to cover that might be a pretty good pick for you if you're at home looking to put some money on this game. But overall, who I think will come out on top, I think you're going to have to give me the Eagles. I think that the running game is going to be hard for Washington to stop.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is a team coming off a 45-point performance against one of the better teams in their conference, actually the number one seed in their conference, in the Lions as big-time underdogs. But now they're going to go into Philadelphia, obviously a division rivalry matchup. Matt, this means so much to you. This means so much to the Washington faithful and obviously the Philadelphia faithful. Trip to the Super Bowl on the line in what is a matchup with a bad blood history. But here's a guy that we've been talking about a lot for the past couple weeks. It's been Daimi Brown, someone who that
Yeah.
you would not uh, be expecting to hear about, but he has performed well above what his expected standards are. But for me, I think the key player for Washington is going to be Zach Ertz. Here's a guy who has re-emerged out of what looked like the declining point of his career.
Mhm.
He has come back with Washington, been a great target and sure hands guy for Jaden Daniels. He's liked to throw the ball to him. He's been really consistent. I think that Washington is able to keep it close, well within that 6 point spread. I think it's just going to be a little bit too much for them to stop Saquon Barkley. Obviously, for the Eagles, expect Jalen Hurts to be doing what he's been doing
Mhm.
all playoffs long, which is not dominating in the passing game. Let the running game run its course. Their defense has played fairly well throughout these playoffs. They've held Green Bay, they've held Los Angeles. Now it's their turn to face a fiery, hot Jalen Daniels team. Matt, I'm extremely excited to hear what you got about this one.
Yeah, I mean, this is a gonna be a big running game for both teams. The Eagles averaged 179 rushing yards per game this season, which was the second most in the NFL, and the Washington averaged 154 rushing yards per game, which was the third most in the NFL. Philly allowed just 278 yards per game, which is over 30 yards less than the next team on the list, the Tennessee Titans. They gave up just 18 points per game, which is the second least of any team, and they obviously allowed the fewest passing yards per game this season. Their defense has been amazing. The Commanders allowed the third most rushing yards per game, which is obviously frightening. If you ask any Commanders fan, the number one thing we're most concerned about this game is Saquon Barkley, who has averaged 143 scrimmage yards per game this season, 15 total touchdowns last week against the Rams, 232 scrimmage yards, and 2 touchdowns. Barkley has been absolutely insane. And then A.J. Brown has averaged 20 receiving yards, just 20 receiving yards in his last 3 games. He has not been that much of a factor. And a lot of that is because of Jalen Hurts. While Jalen Hurts hasn't thrown an interception in his last 8 games, he hasn't completed 20 passes or he has completed 20 passes just one time since September 29th. Yes, September 29th. Um, He's completed 20 passes just one time throughout that span. And so far in the playoffs, Jaden Daniels has averaged 327 yards per game, four total passing touchdowns, zero interceptions. McLaurin has nine touchdowns in his last 8 games. And, Diame Brown, as you mentioned, how good he has been. He's averaged 94 receiving yards per game this postseason, as well as one receiving touchdown. Now, obviously, the key for Washington this game will be to contain Saquon Barkley. That's not an easy task by any means, but I'd say if Barkley is kept to 100 rushing yards and a touchdown, that is a massive victory for the Commanders. And this is tough because you mentioned this earlier where will I go with the Commanders again to lose because I've picked against them the first two games of the playoffs, and they've won both of them. But no, I actually have a 34-25 Commanders victory. Yep, a
25.
9-point Commanders victory, so obviously covering the spread. And the key player for Washington is without a doubt going to be Trent Scott, who will step in for Cosme at right guard. Jalen Carter is coming off a game with 2 sacks, 2 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble. So obviously containing him is going to be crucial. And honestly, I don't know what to expect in this game. There's a lot of nerves, obviously. I could see it going either way, but I am going to give the benefit to the Commanders. I do think there will be a lot of Commanders fans in attendance, even though the game is in Philadelphia. Going to be an exciting game. I can't talk too much about it until we see what happens. Because there's like 100 different outcomes for this one. It's really, really unpredictable. But I can guarantee you I'm looking forward to it. Again, still can't process the situation that Washington is in right now, where if we win, we make the Super Bowl. That just doesn't make sense to me. But I'll take it. So hopefully we get the win in this game and keep going from there.
Yeah, Matt, I got one more big thing to add if you're a Philadelphia fan, or really if you're looking at this game as a whole. One huge factor will be that Philadelphia, their secondary is back to being healthy. Quinyon
Yeah.
Mitchell is a 100% go in this game, which is absolutely going to be huge. Rookie sensation. He was comfortable heading into the week. Reporters asked him on Wednesday how he was feeling. He said, "I'm totally good to go." So that's great news if you're an Eagles fan. Not so much if you're a Commanders fan, because that means there might be trouble going on that deep ball, joined by Cooper DeJean in that secondary. That is a young, talented secondary back there for Philadelphia. So, do you think that'll affect Washington's game plan? Will they go more of the underneath stuff? They beat the Lions with all kinds of stuff, but there was also those firework plays deep down the field, Matt.
When it comes down to it, the two players that you mentioned are both rookies, and DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, rookies that the Commanders probably could have gotten in the draft, actually. Um,
Yeah,
and I was kind of hoping we got in the draft, so that'll be interesting to see how they play against us. But no, Terry McLaurin is not going to have any problems against them. I don't know if Brown's really going to have as good of a game um, as he has in the past, because that's really high bar for him. But I do think Jaden won't struggle too much getting his wide receivers involved in this one. And no, rookie cornerbacks don't really scare me too much. Yeah, no pain in this game that will, as I mentioned, make a big impact for Washington against an already the best offensive line in the NFL. I'd expect Dan Quinn to be just as aggressive as he's been in the playoffs so far, because with a team like Washington, who might not be as talented on paper as the Eagles, I'd definitely say. I think going for risks obviously makes up for that. Can definitely be really, really bad, but based on what Washington has done this season, oh, thank you. I like your hat, Matthew. Got this one recently, but based on what based on what Washington has done so far this postseason, I don't know if we're beating the Lions and we're beating the Buccaneers if we haven't attempted 9 fourth downs.
right.
Um, yeah, so I think that's something that we have to continue to do, and I think that probably gives us the best chance to win this game. Now moving over to the next one, This is the night game, not really night, more evening, I guess, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. Bills at Chiefs. Chiefs are 2-point favorites. Now, Patrick Mahomes is 3-0 against the Bills in the playoffs.
Yep.
In those 3 games, he's thrown 8 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, and has a passer rating of 127. That is unbelievably high. Um, and then this season, Kansas City has allowed just 19 points per game, which is the fourth fewest of any team in the NFL. Patrick Mahomes has not thrown an interception in 7 weeks. In Travis Kelce's last 2 games, he's averaged 101 receiving yards and has 2 receiving touchdowns. This has been a lot more of the prime Travis Kelce that we've been seeing recently. He obviously had an off year, but he's looked a lot better in these past few games. Kareem Hunt has 1 touchdown in each of his last 3 games. And then, speaking of in their last 3 games, Isaiah Pacheco has averaged just 20 scrimmage yards. Since he's come back, he hasn't really been that much of a factor, obviously. So I would expect the ball to go into Kareem Hunt's hands a lot more, assuming that the Chiefs do utilize running the ball a lot in this game. And then this season, the Bills have scored 31 points per game, which is the second most in the NFL. And they have a turnover differential of 24 this season. They had, which is by far the most in the league. They had 8 giveaways and I believe 32 takeaways. That is really, really good for them, obviously. Keon Coleman has just 5 receiving yards in each of his last 2 games, and Amari Cooper has just 8 receiving yards combined in his last 2 games. The Chiefs have gone 11-0, obviously, in one possession games this season, as I mentioned in the last show. And while Buffalo did beat Kansas City earlier in the year, we all know that playoff Patrick Mahomes is a completely different story. There's no doubt in my mind that the Bills have looked better this season, but there's also no doubt in my mind that Kansas City will be advancing to the Super Bowl for the 3rd straight season, 4th straight season. I'm
Yep.
losing count at this point.
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes looking for a three-peat. Matt, I gotta applaud you. You touched on all the good bricks right there. Yeah, this matchup has a ton of history, especially in the last 5 years, especially in the playoffs. Kansas City has owned Buffalo, and the Bills have that salty taste in their mouths. Ask any Bills fan, the thing they want most is to beat the Chiefs in the playoffs. Right now, that is the Bills' number one priority, beating the Chiefs no matter what goes down in the Super Bowl. If you can beat Patrick Mahomes and get there, that's a win of the season for the Bills. Tim in the chat, I think Chiefs will advance too. Thank you so much for being active in the chat. Anyone else, drop your comments below. We'll highlight you on the stream, or you could call in if you'd like to voice your opinions in person. But I'd agree with you, Matt. Steve Spagnuolo, what he's done with his defense this year, he's taken it to a new level, allowing under 20 points a game. And that has been Kansas City's not really secret sauce, but their winning sauce. What has led them to win? It's not because Patrick Mahomes is playing an MVP caliber season. We know
No.
he's a different beast in the playoffs. But Matt, all season long. Can they pull through in the biggest game and head to the Super Bowl for a chance to three-peat? That's the question. Matt, I was looking at the temperatures for this game earlier today. By the time the half rolls around and the sun setting, it's going to be in the low 20s. So will that affect the choices that are being made, who run the ball? Absolutely. And you know what that means? That means the second half is going to be a lot of running the ball in my eyes. And you know
Yeah.
who that favors? That favors the Buffalo Bills
Yeah.
with James Cook and their offensive line, especially when you have a dual threat quarterback like Josh Allen, who basically third and short and fourth and short are conversions. They have that tush push where Dalton Kincaid takes it himself up the
Yeah.
middle. Josh Allen can run for it whenever he wants. If it truly is as cold as they're calling for, I think that truly favors the Bills in the second half. James Cook, absolute workhorse. He can
Yeah.
take 25, 30 carries in this game if the Bills call on him to do so. Kansas City, not so much. You've mentioned Isaiah Pacheco's struggles. He does not look like the guy he was last season in
No,
his
not
rookie
at all.
year. They're going to have to rely on Kareem Hunt, who I could easily see getting gassed. And if this turns into a running track meet where everyone's running the ball, I think that extremely favors Buffalo. Give me the Bills by a field goal to finally beat the Chiefs, to finally advance to the Super Bowl. They're 0-4 in the Super Bowl, but they want a chance at their redemption. Give me the Buffalo Bills to send Patrick Mahomes packing in the conference championship round.
I don't know. I don't know. I think again, based on what I've seen this season and on paper, the Bills are the better team. They have looked like the better team. They have performed like the better team. I'm just not confident. I'm not gonna say I don't like their odds in the playoffs. I don't like their odds in the playoffs against the Chiefs. That's the only thing. Mahomes never shies away when he plays Buffalo. And I wanted to save my key player for after you got your thoughts out there. Key player for the Chiefs this game will definitely be Nick Bolton. During the regular season, Bolton had 106 total tackles, 3 sacks, 11 tackles for loss, 6 passes defended, a forced fumble, and 2 fumble recoveries. One of the Chiefs' better defenders. And this season for the Bills, James Cook averaged just over 79 uh, scrimmage yards per game. However, in the Bills' 4 losses, Cook averaged just 51 scrimmage yards per game and had 2 combined touchdowns. And I know 2 touchdowns in 4 games isn't bad, but he had 18 total touchdowns in 16 games this season. So it's not great compared to what he usually does. So yeah, in the wins, James Cook has been amazing. In the Bills' 4 losses, James Cook has been somewhat lackluster, and if Kansas City is able to stop James Cook in this matchup, it'll make things 10 times more difficult for Josh Allen and the rest of the team. I think Nick Bolton's going to play a massive part in that, so he is the key player for Kansas City.
Matt, here's the thing, and I'll get to my key player in a
Mhm.
second. When I look up and down this Chiefs schedule, excluding the game against the Broncos because they didn't want to win that game or they didn't care if they
Yeah.
won that game, they're really not dominating as much as the Bills were. Like, even last week against Houston, Houston had a good chance to win that game, but you're talking about a Bills team going up against Lamar Jackson, who had a chance to win that game. But CJ Stroud really has not looked great in the playoffs. Obviously, they destroyed Los Angeles, but he didn't look great against the Chiefs. But here's the thing: Kansas City has had a weaker strength of schedule in the season. Buffalo has dominated the games that they have needed to. You mentioned their meeting way back in that regular season, a 30-21 win for the Bills. Even though Kansas City only had one true loss in the regular season, I think the Bills have shown me enough that their offense can outduel Patrick Mahomes.
I don't think so. They gave up 44 points to the Rams. I know the Rams are a good team, but 44 points for against one of the better defenses in the league. And then obviously they lost to the Patriots, right? They lost to the Patriots.
Beat the Lions.
They lost to the Ravens by 25. And that's obviously during the regular season. They beat them in the playoffs. And then they lost to the Texans. You just mentioned that the Texans aren't playing that well. They lost to the Texans earlier in the year. Their 4 losses don't look that good. It really doesn't look good for them. And I know that they've played a tougher schedule than the Chiefs, but if they're losing these games, then I have no reason to believe that they're going to win this one. Is all I'm thinking. But who's your key player for this one?
My key player is going to be Damar Hamlin. Talk about a bounce back season. He's been awesome. He's extremely close. He's actually one tackle away from shattering the 90 tackles mark on the season. He has been one of Buffalo's leading tacklers, but at the safety position, which is extremely interesting because you'd think of a guy at the linebacker spot who's up there in that 90 tackle region, flying all over the field. Damar Hamlin, as the last line of defense, has 90 tackles on the season. He's come up and been that playmaker. Has made the turnovers. He has 2 interceptions and a forced fumble, which is good for a safety. He gets sent on the blitz sometimes, but what he really does is he helps out in that secondary. He makes sure of it. I think he's going to be a big key to stop what Kansas loves, especially against the Bills, especially in the playoffs. Remember back to that 13-second game against the Bills, 2, 3 years ago? I think 3 years ago. When that one was just uh, it was just one of those games where you chuck it up the secondary and somebody's down there and make a 40-yard play. They had 13 seconds. They worked their way into field goal range and forced time where they then won. But the thing is, I think DeMar is able to limit the big plays for Kansas City in this game. I think he's able to keep that secondary intact and not allow the explosive, big firework loaded plays for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs offense.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to Hamlin. His story has obviously been amazing. But you're right, he will be a massive, massive player in this game. Now I believe we have opposite Super Bowls. I have Commanders Chiefs, you have Eagles Bills in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Yep. So that
That's
will
yeah, that's
mhm.
true. Didn't think of that.
Yeah, that will be interesting. We'll obviously see how these guys play out. I think first game for me going to be really nerve-wracking. We'll be able to enjoy the second game a lot more. Obviously, depending on what happens in the
Yeah.
first game, but either way, I think it's going to be really fun to see Mahomes versus Allen, as it always is. Maybe the jersey will bring me good luck. I've worn the same outfit. Um, the first two playoff games, I'll probably have to drop the hat. I'm not a superstitious guy, but if I haven't worn the hat the past two games, I like the hat, but I'm probably gonna have to drop it for this one.
Where's the Redskins football, Matt? We need it.
Yes, I don't have that right now, but the Redskins football will be there, the helmet will be
it'll be
there.
it'll be
Uh,
in hand.
yes, it will all be there. It
All
will
right.
absolutely all be there. Gotta bring all the luck that I can.
You know what? I get a take for this game. I feel like, for me personally, I think at some point they gotta take Jim Nance and Tony Romo off of these Patrick Mahomes games. That's me. I mean, I want Ian Eagle, Kevin Harlan, somebody great on this. No, that's no offense to one of the all-time broadcasting legends. That duo is absolutely iconic, but we know how much Tony Romo likes Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
Interesting.
interesting is a good way to put it. We know how much the refs like Patrick Mahomes. We're gonna see if that I'm not someone who likes to no, the jersey is not signed. I wish it was. That'd be amazing. I'm not someone who likes to critique refs because their job is extremely difficult and
Yeah.
no matter what they do, half of the people watching the game are gonna be
Yes.
angry at them, right?
Correct.
But it feels like it's been a little bit excessive recently in terms of the hit that Mahomes took out of bounds from roughing the passers. It's just been some calls have been a little weird recently. And obviously, I'm not saying that the NFL is rigged for the Kansas City Chiefs, but it has been a recent trend. And to say that it's random, well, yeah, it is random, but to say that there hasn't been a trend would not be true. And we'll see if that continues in this game. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But hopefully, we have a fair matchup. Do you know? I know you checked the weather. Do you know if there's any snow in this game for Buffalo?
Let me check real quick. I did not check.
Let's see.
In the meantime,
Is there snow in Buffalo right now?
it's in Kansas City, Matt.
In Kansas City. That's what I meant. And I kind of don't like that.
Kansas City weather. We are looking at now. It's
No
no
snow.
percent chance of precipitation. Right now, it's 30. Feeling like low 20s. It's 29, feeling more like 22,
Well,
but
you know how
zero
I feel.
precipitation in the forecast.
You know how I feel about playoff snow games, so I guess I don't hate that. And I mean,
Oh yeah.
it's not that I hate the snow, but you're also not getting as exciting as high scoring of a game if there's snow. Not as exciting offenses, not as
Well,
explosive. So
wasn't
even
it
I
really
don't even
cold
care
that
if
13 seconds game?
yeah, there might have been. I think yeah, there might have been. But either way, I do think that the offenses are going to be a lot more productive um if there's not snow
Yeah.
on the ground. So I'm kind of glad that there isn't, even though it's not the end of the world if there was. It'd still be a pretty fair game for two teams that are used to playing in the snow, unlike the Rams who play in Los Angeles. Um, but with that being said, can't thank you enough for coming on. Really do appreciate it. Is there anything else you want to say to the people watching before we wrap things up?
Nah, I think I'm good. Nice episode here. Excited to watch these conference championship games.
Yep.
Guys, in case you're wondering, kickoff for that Chiefs Bills game is 6:30, and then for that first
Mhm.
one is Eagles Commanders. That one will be over
Yeah.
on Fox, and then Chiefs Bills over on CBS. So in case you're
Yeah.
wondering, that is games. Matt, any final from
Uh,
you besides go Commanders?
um, gonna be the longest 3 hours of my life after we stop this show. I will tell you that much. Waiting for this game to start. It's gonna be rough, but as you said, go Commander. Let's go to the Super Bowl. I don't even know like what world I'm living in anymore, but I will not take it for granted. I mean, let's just pick up this victory. And from a bigger perspective, we don't like the Eagles around here. Uh, you're not an uh, you're not an NFC East fan of any team,
I'm
but I
not.
know you still hate the Eagles. Um, any football fan hates the Eagles, so let's take them down. You know what I'm saying? Let's take them
Underdog
down.
story.
Yeah, let's take them down in this one. But for everyone who made it up to this point, can't thank you enough for watching. Again, I'm Matthew Heiserman alongside Josh Wolver for your Highlight Haven NFL Tailgate show. And as always, we will see you next time.